don't like the pillows. I hate hotel pillows. They're not even pillows. They're just air, right? But it's like, what happens when you don't like something in a hotel? You don't go and buy a new one. You don't go, you know what, I'm leaving. It's like a different mindset. It is called the mindset of a traveler. The mindset of a traveler is very different than the mindset of a permanent resident. Very different. When I am in my permanent home and I don't like the pillow, it's different. When I'm in my permanent home, I want to make sure I like the couch, right? It's very different. I will invest. It's just a different mindset. What is Allah telling us? What is the messenger telling us? He is saying, be in this life like a traveler, because you are. This is a rest area. He says, what am I? He said, what am I in this life but a traveler who stops in the shade of a tree and then continues on his journey? This is just our stopover. You know, that city that you're stopping over in, it's not your destination. And so when you see it like that, you become very, very different in how you interact with that life. But I will tell you this. If you start to get confused and you start to think that this is the destination, you will get very, very devastated. It will actually lead to devastation. And I don't say that lightly. I mean devastation, capital D, like heartbreak. Heartbreak. If you want to understand the root cause of true heartbreak and devastation, it is hubb dunya. It is when you become when you have an unhealthy love and an unhealthy attachment to this life. How does that show up? How does that show up? Well, it shows up differently for different people. Okay? What is dunya? Well, dunya is all of the created things, right? So what does that include? Well, it includes our money. That's obvious. What does it look like for some people? Hubb dunya looks like love of wealth, love of money. And it is an attachment to money, an attachment to wealth that becomes a disease. That's what it looks like. For some people, it might be power. I'm sure we can see what that looks like. Just turn on the news. Attachment to power. Attachment to influence. Attachment to status. Now I'm going to talk about that for a moment because that's more relevant to us, probably. What does attachment to status look like? What is attachment to how I appear? Because what is status, right? Image. Image. You know when how you appear in society becomes so important? And I say this as I don't mean that you just care about being respectable. I don't mean just that. I mean when it becomes so important that it drives your life. I mean when it becomes so important that it drives how you raise your children. I mean when it becomes so important that it drives how you show up. How you show up in society, how you show up in social media. That it becomes an obsession. That I need to show face in a certain way. Me and my family, we have to keep a certain status about us. We have to make sure that the world knows that we are at this status, that we have this, privilege or this money or that we have a certain image to keep. You understand? And I say this because it's such an important reminder again and again that we have to keep reminding ourselves, because why? Because I am speaking to a group of privileged people. We are privileged. We are not just, a community, okay? We are a privileged community. We are a wealthy community. We are a community that came from status, and we are a community of status. If you look at the demographic, for example, of Muslims in America, it's a specific demographic. If I asked most of you, where are you from in Pakistan, you will say defense. And I know that. What does that mean? I know what that means. I know the difference. That's my point. My point is that with that comes a whole host of trials, a whole host of tests. Because if we come from status and we come from money, sometimes that can become our test. And it's dangerous. Now, I don't say that wealth in and of itself is dangerous necessarily. Status in and of itself is not dangerous necessarily. The problem is when it becomes your center. When it becomes your center. So my first book, Reclaim Your Heart, is about this concept. This is the main concept of Reclaim Your Heart. And the message is this. When Allah gives us things of dunya, when He gives us gifts, these are the ni'am of Allah, the blessings of Allah, right? When Allah gives us gifts, the gift in and of itself is not the problem. The gift is not the problem. It's not the wealth that's the problem in its essence, in and of itself. The wealth itself can be neutral one way or the other. It's not the status itself that's the problem. It's not inherently evil, right? It's not the power itself. It's what do you do with it and where do you hold it? What do you do with it and where do you hold it? This is this is actually the core of it. So I talk about the difference between taking a gift and holding it in your hand versus taking a gift and holding it in the core of your heart. And this is the difference between success and failure. This is also the difference between happiness and misery. Happiness, enjoying the gift, enjoying the blessing, and being tortured by it. The gift itself can either be something you enjoy if you keep it in your hand. You can enjoy your money. You can enjoy your status. You can enjoy your privilege and your influence. These are gifts. They can be gifts. Your career, your whatever it is, that is a gift. You can enjoy it if you keep it in the hand. But I promise you, it will torture you. The very same thing that was a blessing and could be an enjoyment if you held it in the hand actually will be the greatest torture for you if you hold it in the core of your heart. The money itself becomes your torment. The money itself becomes why you can't sleep at night. The money itself becomes why you have anxiety. Well, how much do I have? How much did I lose? How much am I making? The dollars and cents become the prison. You now are imprisoned by your wealth. Why? Because it went in the core of the heart. Hubb dunya. It's not just holding dunya. There are companions, they were rich. Great companions, very wealthy. Right? They had influence and power. They were influential companions who were, they had influence, they had power, they had wealth. Great people. But where did they hold it? And so if you hold the gift in the core of your heart, it goes from being a blessing to being a torment. Now, there is another, now this is a little bit easier to understand. The idea of wealth and these kind of material things are easier to understand as being a part of dunya that we got to keep in our hand. But I can tell you that there's something else that isn't so easy to understand or manage. And that is people. That is people in our lives. That is relationships. Relationships can also be dealt with in a way that either becomes something you enjoy, or it can become something that tortures you. And what is the difference? Exactly the same. How is the nature of the attachment? Is the attachment healthy, or have you taken that person and inserted them into the core of your heart? Now, I say this because this is one of the most confusing and difficult parts. I can say from personal experience, it was my biggest struggle. And writing Reclaim Your Heart was a process because of this issue. How did I relate to other people? How did I attach with other people? This was my biggest struggle. Because if you do not relate and attach to other people, and now what am I talking about other people? Am I talking about the neighbors? Am I talking about strangers? I am talking about the closest people to you. I am talking about your children. I am talking about your mother. I am talking about your father. I am talking about your brother and your sister and your spouse. I'm talking about the closest people to you. If you do not connect to them in the right way, you will be tormented by that relationship. It will become the source of your greatest pain. And it has everything to do with, where are you holding these gifts? Our children are a gift, but they're also a test. You know this because Allah tells us in the Quran, fitna, He calls it. He says your children and your wealth are a fitna. Fitna? Is that a bad thing? No, fitna means test. They're not evil in and of themselves. I mean, Allah's not telling us your children are evil. Okay? He's not saying your wealth is evil either. He's saying they are tests. They are tests. Your children, your spouse, your parents, and this is sometimes one of the hardest to understand. I have met people who, after they lose a parent, they cannot heal. And I'm talking years. I'm talking years. I'm not talking about normal grieving. I'm talking about they cannot go on. Do you know the cause of that? The cause of that is this. I want you to understand that who was the most beloved person to the companions, the great companions? The Prophet ﷺ. And that's why this lesson is so important. When he died, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you saw the reactions of these people that loved him, around him, right? The closest people to him. You see the reaction of Umar radiallahu anh. He actually was what we would call in psychological terms, he was in denial at first. Shock and denial. He took his sword and he said, if anyone says that he has died, he's like, this was his initial reaction. It was so hard for him. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, in that same moment of grief and loss, and there is no greater human loss, right, than the loss of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what did Abu Bakr radiallahu anh say? He said, if you worshipped Muhammad, know that Muhammad has died. But if you worship Allah, know that Allah never dies. That is the lesson. And nobody loved another person more than the companions loved the Prophet ﷺ. But this is the lesson. And for some people, that center is their own parents, their mother, their father. For some people, that center is their child. And when you make that your center, for some people, that center is your spouse. Now, I don't need to tell you, because everyone in this room is old enough to have tried enough of life to know the torment that comes when you make a human being your center. If it's a spouse, you will be tormented in that marriage. You will be tormented until you remove that spouse from the center and put Allah there. I cannot tell you how many people who said, reclaim your heart, saved my marriage. Why?